Okay, guys, welcome back to Film Studies, and today we move forward and take a look at a style of art and filmmaking that continues to profoundly influence movie making today. If you have ever watched a Tim Burton movie like Beetlejuice or The Nightmare Before Christmas or Edward Scissorhands or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, or if you've ever read a Dr. Seuss book, you have unknowingly been exposed to German Expressionism. And this continues to be one of the most influential schools of filmmaking in all of film history. Ironically, the period in which it was in its original heyday was so short, but continues to be so influential to this day. So let's get started. Germany's Weimar Republic. Of course, after the German city Weimar, Weimar culture was a flourishing of the arts and sciences that happened during the Weimar Republic between Germany's defeat at the end of World War I in 1918 and Hitler's rise to power in 1933. So we're not talking about a very long period of time. And unbeknownst perhaps to some of you, Germany was a great deal like us in between 1918 and 1933. They became a republic, a democracy. A short-lived democracy, but a democracy nonetheless. And it was during this period that you had a very high level of intellectual production. Germany was the country with the most advanced science, technology, literature, philosophy, and art. 1920s Berlin was at the hectic center of Weimar culture. Although not part of the Weimar Republic, some authors also include the German-speaking Austria, and particularly its capital, Vienna, as part of Weimar culture. So this was a period of the flourishing of the arts. Germany and Berlin in particular was an exceptionally fertile ground for intellectuals, artists, and innovators from many fields during the Weimar Republic years. The social environment chaotic, politics passionate. A significant new development in Germany's intellectual environment happened in 1918 when the faculties of German universities became fully open to prominent Jewish scholars for the very first time. So it became more liberalized, and Jews were able to participate in German universities and contribute to the intellectual flowering of the Weimar period. Anti-Semitism didn't just arrive on the scene with the Nazis. This existed well before World War I, and there was a short period there where Jews were enfranchised. Nosferatu is a German expressionist vampire horror film directed by F.W. Murnau, starring Max Schreck as the vampire Count Orlok. I can remember when I was a little boy in elementary school, I used to love to absolutely check out a book on monsters in the movies. Now, much of it focused on, of course, universal horror characters, which we're going to be talking about a bit later, like the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Wolfman, the Mummy, Dracula, Frankenstein, etc. But I can remember one particular creature that really scared me to death in this book that I checked out over and over again. And it was a picture that literally haunted my dreams. I had never seen the movie. I had no idea what movie it was from. But this image just absolutely scared me to death. And you're getting ready to see it. And it was the horrible-looking, hideous vampire Count Orlok, played by Max Schreck. Nosferatu was shot in 1921 and released in 1922, and was basically an unauthorized adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula, with names and other details changed because the studio could not obtain rights to the novel. For example, words like vampire became Nosferatu and Count Dracula became Count Orlok. They were trying to avoid trouble, but oh boy did they find it. This is the picture that I was telling you about that I saw when I was a little boy in that book that I kept checking out from the library. And that image right there literally haunted my dreams when I was little. That is just absolutely terrifying, isn't it? That is Count Orlok. And unlike the Hungarian accented playboy Bela Lugosi Dracula, this is a horrifying looking creature in this promotional photo for the film Nosferatu. Note the rodent-like incisors and the elongated fingers and the pointed ears and the rodent-looking eyes. Just a horrible-looking creature. The plot of Nosferatu is basically the plot of Dracula. A real estate agent is called to the estate of the reclusive Herr Orlok, played by Max Schreck, whose home in the Carpathian Mountains is to be the scene of evil doings for the rest of this landmark film. While enjoying his host's hospitality, the agent slowly catches on that Count Orlok is no ordinary mortal, and is in fact the cause of mass death in a nearby city. It's up to he and his wife to unveil Orlok's hideous secret and end his reign of evil. Now, one of the things that characterizes German Expressionism is liberal use of light and shadow. This is a scene toward the end of the movie that you'll be seeing here shortly that captures Count Orlok as he creeps upstairs to feed on the real estate agent's wife. And look at that just creepy shadow. Really, really horrifying looking. Actors in German Expressionist films also tend to blend in with the set, as you will see in this scene when Count Orlok comes to feed on the real estate agent and the door swings open and there he is sort of blending into the set itself. On the right we have the theatrical poster for Nosferatu, as well as another promotional photo from the film. Look just how horrible looking that creature is over there on the left. Isn't that terrifying? And still the stuff of nightmares for me. So one has to wonder what influenced Tim Burton to create the character Edward Scissorhands. Well, I think I have a bit of an idea. You look at the fingers there, and we're going to combine those with the Sleepwalker from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari that I'm going to be showing you. And I hope I will have you convinced that I can explain the origin of Edward Scissorhands, how Tim Burton came up with this character. Nosferatu is an example of German Expressionist film, one of a dozen or so that was released in the period from 1920 to 1927. Characteristics of German Expressionism are as follows. First, emphasizing the composition of individual shots to an exceptional degree. Second, sets tend to act or blend in with the actor's movements, as you sort of saw a moment ago with the Count Orlok in the doorway image. In German Expressionist films, action often proceeds in fits and starts, and the narrative pauses or slows briefly for moments when all elements line up for the eye. So a lot of herky-jerky movement, as you will see in the excerpts that I will be showing you. Also characteristic of German Expressionism is liberal use of distortion and exaggeration. This is probably the most recognizable feature of Expressionism as it's used today, with houses pointed and twisted looking, chairs tall and distorted, staircases crooked. Think Dr. Seuss. Think like One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish, or Green Eggs and Ham, like the types of art in Dr. Seuss books. Incidentally, Dr. Seuss was right there in the midst of the flowering of culture in Weimar, Germany. But when the Nazis took over, intelligently fled to the United States, and we continue to use German Expressionism as an ongoing feature of his work in his amazing stories. This is a still from the 1920 German Expressionist film, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. And I'll be showing you a little bit of it. Here you can see, look at the lamppost here, guys. See how it looks like something right out of Dr. Seuss? Look at the weird-looking lamps and the doorways and the exaggerated figures and the shadows that are on the ground, light and dark. Lots and lots of contrast, very weird and distorted looking. Here we have the sleepwalker who is carrying one of his victims to a rooftop, and look at how the chimneys look there, how weird they look, and how the building is kind of leaning over on its side. Just really frightening looking. He's a living, breathing corpse and controlled by someone who gives him marching orders to commit all kinds of terrible acts during the night. And there we see the master of the sleepwalker, as he's called, and has the sleepwalker in a circus sideshow that he uses the sleepwalker as an exhibition in the day and as a tool of terror by night. Here we have the theatrical poster for The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and again the Dr. Seuss-esque looking art that characterizes this poster. We can see the impact of Expressionism in films today. The great Orson Welles was a feature of Expressionism. Alfred Hitchcock frequently used it in his movies. And most recently, the great Tim Burton is a fan of German Expressionism in his work. Perhaps no movie more so than The Nightmare Before Christmas can you see this style of art and filmmaking exhibited, as we can also see in Edward Scissorhands, starring Johnny Depp and Winona Ryder. See the fingers? Then look at Count Orlok. And oh, I'm telling you guys, combine Count Orlok with the Sleepwalker, and we've got Edward Scissorhands. Even in films like Edward Scissorhands, the weird-looking castle that Vincent Price, the great Vincent Price, who actually passed away during the making of Edward Scissorhands, one of the great horror film stars of all time. Here we have another shot outside Edward Scissorhands' father's castle. Just odd and strange looking, very expressionistic. So what do you think, guys? You take Count Orlok and you take the Sleepwalker and you roll them all up into one, and maybe, just maybe, we have sort of cracked Tim Burton's code here, how we ended up with Edward Scissorhands played by the great Johnny Depp. Here we have a little cottage. That is where Charlie lives in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, a film that was a remake of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, starring the great Gene Wilder. I enjoyed this film. I liked the original better, even though this film is probably closer to the book itself. I still really enjoy the original. But look here, you can see, look at the chimney here, guys. Look how it's leaning over and how the house looks weird, really weird and distorted. Very expressionistic. This hallway comes from Beetlejuice, and we can see here the distorted doors and the shadows and the windows, just really odd looking. Nosferatu was the first and last Prana film. The company declared bankruptcy after Bram Stoker's estate, acting for his widow, Florence Stoker, sued for copyright infringement and won. She did not want to sell the rights to her movie at any cost, and because Prana Studios in Germany changed things around, but it was obviously still Dracula, she sued and won. The court ordered all existing prints of Nosferatu destroyed, but thankfully, copies of the film had already been distributed around the world, and a few escaped the furnace. These prints were then copied over the years, helping Nosferatu gain its current reputation as one of the greatest movie adaptations of the vampire legend of Dracula. Some would say the best. With the influence of producer and production designer Albin Grau, the film established one of two main depictions of film vampires. The Nosferatu type is a living corpse with rodent-like features, especially elongated fingernails and incisors, associated with rats and plague, and neither charming nor erotic, but rather totally repugnant. The victims usually die and are not turned into vampires themselves. The more common archetype is the Dracula type, established by Bela Lugosi's version of Dracula and perpetuated by Christopher Lee, a charming aristocrat adept at seduction and whose bite turns his victims into new vampires. A more universal effect of the film is less obvious. Nosferatu single-handedly created the concept that vampires can be physically harmed by sunlight. While this was a common element of many other mythical creatures, pre-Nosferatu vampires disliked but could endure daylight. Since Nosferatu's release, the vampire legends have quickly incorporated the idea of fearing or being destroyed by the sun. The movie has received not only a strong cult following, but also has received overwhelmingly positive reviews, including being cited as the best of all adaptations of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. And now I'll show you guys a few excerpts from the film so you can see what I'm talking about and let you see some of these things in action. This particular scene is the real estate agent arriving at Count Orlok's castle and watches the doors fly open. Yikes. Oh my goodness. Look at this. That is the stuff of nightmares right there, guys. Yikes. That creature. Count Orlok emerges from the bowels of his castle. And of course, we're going to have the doors shut behind him. Boom. Oh. Now you're trapped, buddy. Not good. Yikes. So the real estate agent is meeting with Count Orlok because he wants to move to England. So here we have Count Orlok feeding the real estate agent while he looks over the terms of the lease on the abbey in England. And he is going to cut himself off a piece of bread here and accidentally cut his finger. And oh no! Worst thing you can do around a vampire. Look how creepy that shot is. Yikes. Oh my goodness. He's like, dude, you are a freak. Yikes. And here we have Count Orlok signing the terms of the rental agreement on the abbey. And I love this. I just had to show you all this scene. His wife's picture falls out of his little knapsack. I love his comment here. You gotta love this. Yikes. And if he didn't know that he was messed up before, he certainly does now. So here we have the scene that I showed you where Orlok is in the doorway. He is feeling really awkward, and oh my goodness, why would he not? He looked down the hallway and see that stuff of nightmares, and he's like, yikes! So here we're going to have a really good example of Expressionism. Again, notice the light and the shadow, and there's really no place to go. I mean, you're like 10 stories up, buddy. Watch out for that first step into Lulu. Oh, the door flies open, and here we have one of the characteristic elements of Expressionism. And notice the sort of fits and jerks, another characteristic. Isn't that cool? Oh my goodness. See the fits and jerks that we see there? So characteristic of Expressionism. Now watch him blend into the set. So he wakes up and sees the little marks on his throat and goes looking for Count Orlok. Where is he during the day? And oh, he finds the sarcophagus, and check out this. This is so creepy. Ugh. That would be quite horrifying. Lays in his earth box by day. Yikes. You better run, bud. So the crew of the ship is taking Count Orlok or this luggage of Count Orlok, which is basically his casket. And the crew keeps dying, and they're wondering what is happening to them. So they go below, and one of the crew members is determined to find out what's in the luggage. Rodents are what carry plague. Check this scene out. Holy smokes. Good reason to panic there, sir. This dude gets so freaked out, he jumps overboard. The captain's going to tie himself to the ship and stay at the wheel. Oh, stalking him. Isn't that creepy, guys? Bites the dust. So we're going to fast forward here to the end when Count Orlok has moved in across the street from the real estate agent and his wife. And essentially what has happened here is, reading from the Book of the Vampire, or Nosferatu, you see this passage, deliverance is possible by no other means than an innocent maiden maketh the vampire. Essentially what she's going to have to do is offer herself freely to him to feed on, and hold him there until morning, till the sun comes up. So she is going to offer herself to him as a sacrifice, and she's going to throw the window open and sort of say, hey, I'm here, come get me. And so here we are. There's Orlok. And she is going to try to tell the husband to go somewhere so she can end this, even if it means sacrificing herself. There's Orlok, who sees her. She basically says, "Come get me." Here he comes. Yikes. And in just a moment, we're going to see that really famous staircase scene that I showed you where he creeps up. We see the use of light and shadow. Her husband's going to run off, leaving her there. And here comes Count Orlok. Check this out. One of the creepiest scenes in film history. It is. Look at that, folks. Doesn't get much more expressionistic than that. Oh, look at that. So, according to the Book of the Vampire, an innocent maiden had to keep the vampire until morning. And there's the rooster crowing. And uh-oh, he realizes he's in some serious trouble. He's been there too long. Gosh, isn't that terrifying looking? Yikes! There comes the sun up. This will establish the vampire archetype that sunlight can harm vampires. Poof. And the curse is lifted, and they all live happily ever after. The master is dead. Well, I hope you all enjoyed your excerpts of Nosferatu, and we will be watching brief excerpts from the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, and scenes from another German expressionist classic, the most influential science fiction film of all time, Fritz Lang's Metropolis, that I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy. So make sure that you get these notes, that you submit these notes, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.